The person feels no difference. The person that's brave and the person that has fear, they both feel the same thing. They just act differently.
Welcome to Company on the Rise podcast with Chris, Becky, and Evan. I'm your host, Chris Ricchini, and this is a podcast about entrepreneurship in real time. We're going to take you through what it's like to start a company and grow and get from one level to the next while we're doing it, not before it's done or after we did it. We're going to do it right now, every week. You're going to hear us as we go through what it's like to be a company on the rise. So thanks for joining us, Chris and Becky and Evan. All right, so why are you guys wanting to do this podcast?
I think there are a lot of business media out there, and most of them are success stories, which is great to read about, but there's really very little that happens real time. And so we wanted to give people interested in entrepreneurship, other entrepreneurs going through what we go through every day, a place that they can come and hear a story about a company growing super fast, really still in a little bit of a startup mode, trying to exit startup mode and learn what running a business and operating a business day to day really feels like for those that don't do it. And there's a lot of TV shows, there's a lot of books about this topic, but I think none of those are real time situations. And so the books that are written are all success stories, or they wouldn't have written a book. And so you don't hear about the struggles most of the time in the book. Sometimes they'll put some struggles in there that I'm sure are a little bit different than what really happened. And these TV shows like The Profit and other things that will give you a glimpse at these turnarounds in these businesses. But at the end of the day, you never really know how they turn out, and they make it sound all rosy to wrap up the television show. But I'm sure a lot of them aren't rosy at the end of the day. And so we don't know how this is going to turn out. We're in it real time. We're growing like crazy, and we wanted to give, because I've done a couple different businesses in my career, and I've never been in a business that operates this quickly, this fast, grows at this rate, and I think there's very little media out there, books or otherwise, that give a glimpse into what's going on here and what's going on with this growth rate, expanding and growing this fast. So I think it's a media that we can develop to give other people an insight as to how we're going. We're not going to do everything great, I'm sure. No. I'm sure we, even thus far, we definitely hit bumps in the road. But honestly, that's what makes it fun. Is I love the challenges and that come up every day, and throwing a bunch of things up on the wall and see what sticks, and really just making those decisions on what we decide to continue with, what we decide to scrap, and move forward and really push the company forward. So we're in an industry that frankly, in my opinion, has not done a lot of investment in technology, and we've come in and really said we're going to be the technology leader in this market and try to disrupt the market. And so far, I think we're doing okay at it, and it's going to be a fun ride.
Well, cool. I like that we get to have a little peek behind the curtain to see how all the wizardry happens. And
it'll be ongoing, which I think is really neat. Like, it's not 1 hour and then the episode's over. You're every single week, the ups, the downs, all of that. It's going to be ongoing and really cool.
Yeah, it's not like these TV shows or these books that are years in the making and then written after, or 6 months in the making and highly edited to where down to 20 minutes of television after you get out the commercials, right? This is real time. This is what's happening, and I think because we're growing so fast that there's enough happening that we're going to have all kinds of topics to talk about every
I think
week.
It'll be stuff that's relatable to other businesses, and
for sure.
Yeah,
definitely. I think any business can benefit from taking a peek behind the curtain and looking to see how other people do it, and how quickly it can happen, and the failures, because to me, failure helps you succeed more
Absolutely.
then your successes. Because
So let's talk about that for a second, because I've been asked a couple times by different people on how do you handle failure. And I think I look at it differently, and I don't know where this came from, probably my parents at some level. But I think I look at it differently than most people, because I don't think I have ever failed. Now, I have certainly in other people's eyes failed, don't get me wrong. In my view, if I haven't achieved what I set out to, I'm just not done yet, right? I haven't failed.
It's just a learning
We're just
process.
not there yet.
Yeah.
Now, I also think that there are times where, you hear all these things about don't quit. I also think there are times where you should quit. That you start something and it isn't working, and you need to quit that and change direction. And so in my mind, those aren't failures. That's part of the process. It's part of learning. I don't mentally view them as I think most people. When you conjure up failure, it's a very negative term, and so I don't consider them failures in my mind. I consider them just part of the process, and if it's something I still want to do, I'm just not done yet.
So in an interview, you would probably call them growth opportunities.
Right. I mean, all of that's important. I think you mentioned in an interview, people that have been through experiences I'm very interested in that maybe haven't worked out.
Absolutely.
I don't think there's any shame if you're interviewing at a place saying, here's the experience I went through, and if you're authentic and you've learned something from it, and there's a ton to be gained from that. And so that when you interview here, that doesn't cancel you out at all. There's a lot of discussion that goes into that. I will dive down that hole as deep as you will take me, because there's a lot that can be gained and learned from people in that area.
Yeah.
I tell you, I saw a video this morning, and I had to stop, and you'll know this about me. And it talked about, it was like really inspirational. It talked about you have to go outside of your comfort zone. If you don't go outside of your comfort zone, you're never going to grow. You're never going to change. Right. And I am really bad about that, because I like knowing my role. I like knowing what I'm doing and being able to do a really good job at it. And so I really have to push myself, and I really have to remind myself of that, because it's so true. And
when I started down this entrepreneurial journey, I had a great job. I was running a two divisions of a much larger business, one in Cincinnati and one in Milwaukee. And the business was owned by private equity. I was very comfortable. We had just gone through 2007, 2008. My divisions went through flat. Which, if anybody remembers, 2007, 2008, everybody was down 40%, and we were flat. And so we skated through very well, a lot of luck, a lot of things we did prior to that to set that up correctly. So I'd just gone through that, and I was in my 30s, and this idea started to come up, percolate in my head about, do I want to go off on my own, things like that. And I was in a peer group. I was riding in a car with another entrepreneur at the time. I was not an entrepreneur. I was running these divisions, and we were riding to dinner, and just he and I. And I asked him. I said, because the idea was starting to come up in my head. Should I go try this? And I said, what made you finally make that decision? And his answer changed my life. His answer was, I looked in the mirror one morning, and I asked myself, what's my worst case scenario? And his answer was, I'm living it. I could always go back and doing what I was doing right then. If I didn't try it, I was going to be mad at myself. Right. In the car ride, I mentally quit my job. Wow. And it took another month for it to happen. My wife was pregnant at the time. I came home and told her, hey, I'm leaving my job and going to start something on my own.
Sure.
So wait, she's pregnant and you're telling her that you're quitting your job. Yeah. How'd she take that?
Yeah, very, very well. My wife is awesome, and she has a lot of trust in me, and she said, you know what, I know you'll make the right moves and the right decisions. And but for me, it was, and I'm much older now, but in my, I was in my mid 30s, and to me it was, if I didn't do this by the time I'm 40, I'm probably never going to do it. And so it was really a jumping off point for me, and frankly, I've never looked back, and it's been great.
Well, that kind of goes back to your point about knowing when to quit, because there is a certain point in life where, it's too hard to restart sometimes.
Right. That's right.
And if you don't take that scary plunge, it reminds me of like Indiana Jones when he has to step off of that ledge, and it's blending in with the rocks. And if you don't take the step, or if you take the step, you could plunge to your death. It's scary to make a move like that. But one of the things that I tell my daughter is, it's okay to be scared. If you're scared and you do it anyways, that makes you brave. How important do you think the support was to help you make that kind of step?
Oh, it was everything. Knowing that you had the support, and there's I forget which book it's in, but you mentioned brave and scared. Bravery and fear in this book talks about there's no difference. The person feels no difference. The person that's brave and the person that has fear, they both feel the same thing. They just act differently.
Yeah.
They act on that feeling differently. And I think that really,
that's so true.
It's so true,
Yeah,
right?
I like that.
The person that is brave still has all those emotions.
Right.
But if you look at a person that's in fear and a person
like
that's
that.
brave, they just acted differently from each other.
Wow.
And they both still felt the same feelings. So I think that has always hit home for me as well.
Yeah. So when you first started out and you were in that car and you were thinking, okay, this is what I'm doing, how different has the journey been compared to what you were imagining in that car?
Well, I can tell you this. I would have bet all my net worth that I would have never been in outdoor lighting.
Really?
And here I am. So, and we'll go over the path on how we got here, but yeah, I think that's probably always the case. I think you imagine starting out and you develop this kind of concept and this plan on what you're going to do, and along the way you evolve. Along this journey you evolve, and your plan changes and things are thrown at you that you never expected, and so it turns out a lot different than you start. And I think one of the key attributes that you have to have as an entrepreneur is you have to be able to go into every day with an open mind and say, because if you get stuck in a path and you're not looking at the other things happening around you, you're probably going to end up on a path that isn't very successful. So you're going to have to adjust along the way.
Right. So Becky, you've been with them for a lot of the years. Have you seen them adjusting pretty good along the way?
I think Chris is really remarkable in the sense of his mind doesn't stop. And so he has these ideas, and he has ideas that sometimes I think are just so off this planet, and they're so cool though, and they bring results, and so it's been fun to watch, and I think I've learned a lot from Chris, and I have a lot to learn and a lot to work on in myself too, just watching him and the way that things work here or whatever. But it's been a really good experience.
Who was your first official employee?
Well, it depends on when you consider the beginning the beginning.
So when
That's true.
Because I'm one, if you think of a certain timeline.
Evan is definitely
You're the longest here now,
one
right?
of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, officially.
Yeah.
Like me and Mark started about the same time, but I think officially I was hired before him because he was still in school.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So Evan, how did he convince you about his dreams?
My charm, for the most
His
part.
charm.
And there it is.
Well, it seemed like I have a similar spirit as far as wanting to try things on my own and forge my own path, and I do that in different ways, like with music and art and stuff, because that's kind of where my passion is. But I saw that same parallel in Chris, and so I was just like, yeah, I'm behind this.
Cool.
So yeah, it was just kind of like a kindred spirit sort of thing, even though it's totally different worlds,
Right.
Yeah.
Because
Like you understood the spirit, even though the activities are different.
yeah, I'm less business minded for sure.
Right.
But the idea of forging your own path and doing your own thing by your own set of rules is something that definitely resonates with me, just in general. So
Nice.
yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's true. And as I look back, I give my ex-boss, the CEO of the old company where I ran the couple divisions, a ton of credit because I probably wasn't a very good employee. I was very stubborn, and I ran those businesses as if I owned them, and so the decisions that I made. I was very stubborn in those decisions because I felt like I ran those businesses as if I owned them, which I think is what they ultimately wanted me to do.
Right.
But it made for probably me being a tough employee. So I give him a ton of credit. I learned a ton from that man. Very, very smart individual, and it was definitely part of the path. But you go back and you look at starting a business today versus starting a business 30, 40 years ago. And, you go back at, you mentioned the timing and all of it. I think there's tons of opportunity for people coming out of high school, coming out of college, a couple years in the workforce to make that jump way earlier than it used to be, because you don't need as much startup cash to start a business in certain arenas. I also think, and I wasn't aware of this at all, but I am becoming more and more aware of, there are tons of opportunities for people to get angel investment money and things like that. If you Google search those opportunities, there are all kinds of people investing in entrepreneurial style businesses with good. Now you have to have a business plan, you have to have a great idea, but there is money out there if you want investors in those things, and you can. I mean, there are organizations that you can go to pitch your business, and even if you don't end up getting an investor on the first pitch, talk to those people and understand why they didn't want to invest, and follow up with them and modify your business plan, and
Right.
You'll have a better business at the end of the day if you keep it up. But the other thing that I wanted to talk about real quick in this first podcast is that the other reason that we're doing this is because I was lucky enough. My father was an entrepreneur, and so I was lucky enough to grow up in that environment and see it kind of firsthand, which is really at the end of the day the heart of why we're doing this, I think. And going through school, when I went to school, and I think it to some degree it's still the same, there was no education around how to start a business. When I went to school, it was you should go to college for 4 years and you should get a job and you should stay at that job for a very long time and invest 10% of your money and you're going to be fine.
Right.
And that's perfectly fine for a lot of people. There's a set of people in this world where that's not the ideal situation.
Right.
And so, and I don't think our education system does a very good job at giving opportunities and giving the education to those people. So I'm hoping as part of this platform, we can help give those kids and those younger adults an insight into how this works.
Right, and especially with the experience that you've had and the experiences that you're going through, I think anybody listening in would be able to get tons of great content that can help them in their own experiences. Has there been anything on this journey, has there been anything that has really surprised you?
We are surprised every day, I think. The biggest thing I'm surprised at, number one, so I'm going to answer that with a couple different answers. Number one is that I didn't see myself as a startup. I use a couple different peer groups. I use some coaching, and I stood on the rock and said, I am not a startup guy. And I fully believe that. I fully believe that because my background was I was in charge of 150, 200 people running a business, a much larger business, and I had never done a startup before, and I didn't think I thought I was, at the end of the day, I think my unique talent is product creation, and I thought that I would need the team of that big of a business to help my unique talent thrive, because to develop the products that we would create. And so number one, I didn't see myself as that. So when I took this leap, that was a big jump for me, because I didn't see myself as that. Number two, and I go in Becky's office once a week in shock, is I had no idea, and I'm very thankful and blessed that we are able to grow a business this fast, and it is one heck of a run, and it is a fun ride. It is a fun ride, and I've never been part of a business. I'm in a lot of peer groups. I've never been in a part of a business, or even, I've read books about it, but I've never been in it real time, in me personally experiencing a business growing at this rate. It's stunning. And it's remarkable. And I never dreamed it would be like this.
I want to add to that. So we had the event recently, and when he's in the midst of doing everything, just humans in general, we miss so much because we're in the middle of it all. And so I made him stop, and I told him, I was so proud of him, everything that he's doing, and watching everybody's reactions there. So it's not really, under the question of, what was a surprise. But I just love taking that in, and I wanted him to stop and take some of that in too. And
just recognize what's happening, where he is
how
in his
awesome
life,
you've done, and what all's happening around you.
Yeah, remember this moment.
Yeah.
But it's really we. It's really all of us. It is. We have built a fantastic team, and that's, for me, that's a big part of it. With COVID and everything going on in the last couple of years, we get a ton of requests from people looking for jobs and things like that about, can I work from home, blah, blah, blah. And the answer is no for us. And the answer is, we are definitely flexible with our schedules. But for me, this whole thing's about the journey. And if you're not here to experience the journey, that's not fun. And so I really love the camaraderie that the team has when we get together for the lunches and and go over kind of the plan of the business and what we're doing and what we did, up to that point. And that's the fun part, the interaction between the team, the practical jokes that happen every day, and that's what makes it fun. And then out of that becomes a culture, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in a later episode, but culture is extremely important for us.
Well, great. I'm glad that you're allowing us to take a look behind the scenes and get a better idea of what a company goes through when they're happening, because there's a lot of people out there who, they start something and they have no idea how to do it. That's quite frankly how I was at the beginning of my career, and you just fumble your way through it. But it's nice when you can have a little bit of guidance and a little bit of help, so it's not completely dark through the woods.
It is. And I think for me, peer groups and coaching is important, and that's kind of a little bit about what this is, hoping reaching a bigger audience, is that I get a ton of ideas from people from completely different industries on how they run their business and what they do here and what they do there, and say, man, I would really like to emulate that piece of it, or they do that really well. How do they do that? And so I think there's always something to be gained from it. I'll credit my old boss once again, is that he had a saying that I will never forget. And he was in charge of mostly acquisitions for that business. And he had a saying that said, I will go anywhere in the world to have a cup of coffee. And what he meant by that is, I will go anywhere in the world to talk to anybody in this industry for an hour, because I'm going to learn something. And I can take what I learn and help our business. And he did it. I flew I flew to Munich with him for dinner. I went through customs, and the guy said, "How long are you going to be here?" And I said, "About 4 hours."
Wow. Just for dinner.
Just for dinner with a competitor. Yeah. And so I will never forget that lesson, because I think it's tremendously important. I think it's tremendously important to network. I was a shy kid, really shy kid, and I think that networking and being able to have those conversations and being able to process your own view. I mean, that's the other thing that I think is missing in our education system is I think you need to take a look at the world and really question, and I think entrepreneurs do this by nature, but really question, take what you see in your vision and what's happening, and really and develop your own opinion about it, and take the different facts from all the sides and really create your own. I think too much of this world takes the opinions of other people and keeps them as their own, and I think this world would be a much better place if you took everything that's going on and made your own opinion about it.
Right. Don't make a carbon copy of what you see. Make your own spin on it and introduce that into the world. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you can take a look at our business and copy the same thing, and would the result be the same? I guarantee it wouldn't.
Right.
I guarantee it would be different, because there's different people involved. You could try to duplicate exactly what we do. So I think the really important part is you can't duplicate. You have to take experiences that other people have had, listen to them, and develop your own opinion about those things. And on my mind right now is inflation and everything. And you kind of take what people are saying. When the government first started talking about the inflation's temporary, and I knew it wasn't temporary, and it wasn't temporary because it went to labor, and as soon as it goes to labor, it's not temporary at all. And so you have to take this. I mean, it's just an example, but you have to take this view of the world and say, I understand what you're saying, and I understand why you're saying it, but here's my own opinion. And I think part of that, and Becky and I talk about this a lot, is follow the money. Right? What's the reason for saying that? And the reason for saying that is because they needed it to be temporary.
Right.
Right. And so how the economy works and all that, but they needed it to be temporary. So they were hoping that their mantra was if we say this loud enough,
right,
it will be.
If we say it loud enough and often enough.
But I think those kind of things, you have to really look at the whole situation. And sometimes you're going to be wrong, for sure. I mean, I am a lot of times. But sometimes you're going to be right, and if your view's a little bit different, those are the opportunities, right? You're going to be wrong a lot, but if you're right a few percent of the time, and you see the world differently than 98% of the people, those right ones are big payoffs. I'm very excited to have this platform to help educate and help give people a view into a company in real time. I mean, this is a company on the rise. This is a company that's growing. It's not necessarily about Haven Lighting. It's more about, in a fast-growing business, seeing how that operates and seeing what happens day to day. We move so fast that I think it's going to be very, very interesting every week. The odds of failure are very high, and it's an underdog story. And when you can be successful, it's a great story.
It comes back to Mr. Rogers' quote that I like a lot, which is look for the people helping. Nice. Like in any sort of situation, it's
look for the helpers.
Yeah, look for the helpers, and that'll help you keep hope and help you keep going. So
nice. Yeah, I like that. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I think this was a great first start.
I mean, we have to end on a Mr. Rogers quote. That's got to be a wrap, right?
We're done. Let's go.
Hey, this is Chris with Company on the Rise podcast. Make sure to subscribe to hear more.